what's up you guys? My name is Marina. Today is the first day of the Reading Rush, so I wanted to share my TBR with you and what books I plan on reading during the Reading Rush. So for those of you who do not know, the Reading Rush is a week-long readathon that's just focused on reading books. It was formerly known as the booktube-a-thon. I've always wanted to participate, and I'm just not good at readathons because I get really excited before the readathon, and then by the time it actually starts, I get very easily distracted. I start reading the longest book I possibly have on my TBR, and then I just don't finish anything. So this year, I'm trying to kind of do it backwards and read shorter books first. So by the end of the week, the momentum is kind of built up, and I just kind of keep reading. So let's jump right into the challenges. So the first challenge is to read a book with a cover that matches your birthstone. My birthday is July, so my birthstone is Ruby, and I picked My Dad Wrote a Porno. So for those of you who do not know, My Dad Wrote a Porno is a podcast about this guy. His dad wrote a really, really crappy porno book called Belinda Blinked, and him and his friends just read the book and kind of comment on it and just laugh about how ridiculous it is. This is the book version of basically the first season of the podcast, which is the first book, and there's a lot of really fun interviews with like the author, and there's like author's notes and really ridiculous diagrams. This is like the funniest, I mean, look at that. It's the funniest podcast I've ever listened to. It's completely ridiculous. And I pretty much listened to the whole first season of this when I was in Iceland. It was like the soundtrack for our vacation. So I'm excited to reread this to kind of like be brought back to Iceland in this like crazy world. It just sounds like a really good time, and I know I'm going to laugh at this and just completely fly through it. So that is my first book. So the next challenge is to read a book that starts with the, and I picked The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. This is the book that I picked up last month, but I only just physically got it this month. When everything was starting with the Black Lives Matter movement, I picked up this book from a Black-owned bookstore in Texas, but because everything was so backed up with shipping, I literally just got this like a few days ago. So I'm really excited to read this. It's also really, really short. And I've heard really fantastic things about James Baldwin. He is a queer Black author, and I just feel like I need this in my life. The next challenge is to read a book that inspired a movie that you've already seen. So I picked Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist by David Levithan and Rachel Cohn. I read this book probably like 10 times, but it's been probably 10 years since the last time I read it. So I'm really excited to kind of like relive this story. This was one of my favorite books when I was in high school, and I just can't wait to live like back in this world with Nick and Nora. And then I'll probably rewatch the movie too because I adored that movie, and it's about a time for a rewatch. So the next challenge is to read the first book you touch. When I was like getting my books to plan this, the first book I picked up was Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. So this will probably be the first physical book that I end up reading, because the first book I'm going to actually read is going to be an audiobook that I don't currently own. I think I'm going to start with Find Me by Andre Aciman, which is the sequel to Call Me By Your Name. So this will be the first physical book that I end up picking up. The next challenge is to read a book completely outside your house, and for this I'm going to be reading one of the Amazon Originals like sci-fi ebooks. I don't remember what it's called. I believe it's by Andy Weir. I'll put the picture right here. I can't remember which one I left off on. So I'm going to probably listen or read that in an audiobook outside because it's really fucking hot outside right now, and there's no way I'm reading like a full-length novel. So I think that's what I'm going to pick for this one. The next challenge is to read a book of a genre that you want to read more of, and for that I picked All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is probably my most anticipated book of the entire year. Number one, it's completely beautiful. Number two, I've heard fantastic things about it. It's an own voices story about being Black and queer, and I have heard so many amazing things about it. It actually just got picked up by Gabrielle Union's like production company, also for a TV series, which is amazing. I cannot wait to read this. Something that I've always wanted to read more of is own voices. I don't think that I read enough of that, and especially Black queer own voices. So this can also apply for this, and The Fire Next Time could also apply for this, but I am like dying to read this book, so can't wait. And then the last challenge is to read a book that takes place on a different continent to where you live, and for that I picked Feeling for Celia by Jacqueline Moriarty. I have been wanting to read this for a while. It's like a really fun contemporary like middle grade high school novel that takes place in Australia. I don't really know what it's about, to be completely honest, because I don't usually read descriptions of books. But I believe that she writes letters to her friend that moves away, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't know, but I've had it on my shelf for a while, and I feel like now is a great time, and it's also pretty short. It's like 200 some pages, so I know I can fly through it. 272 pages, so that's what I'm picking for this one. There's a few books I really want to get to that don't kind of meet all these challenges. This is a huge TBR. There's no way I'm going to read all these, but I'm hoping so. So the first one, like I said before, is Find Me by Andre Aciman. That is a sequel to Call Me By Your Name. I got that on ebook from the library, or audiobook, so I really hope to read that, as well as it's like the Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampires or Slaying Vampires or something by Grady Hendrix. I also just got that on audiobook, so I'd like to read that. And then I have a few graphic novel ebooks that I got from NetGalley. So the first one is something called Ever After. It was translated from German. And then there's another one, something about extraterrestrials. I'll leave pictures for them here. But I want to read both of those. And then if I get to all those and I still have a chance to, I'd really like to read Natalie Tan's Book of Luck and Fortune by Roselle Lim. This is a book that takes place in San Francisco, in Chinatown, and it deals with grief and food. There's a lot of magical realism in it. And it's just an amazing, amazing story. I absolutely adored it. It's one of my favorite books that I read last year, probably in my top 5. And the second book, which is Vanessa Yu's Magical Paris Tea Shop, I believe is what it's called, that comes out on August 4th. So I'd like to reread this by the time that book's come out. And yeah, so hopefully I can get to this. If not, I'm going to be reading it the following week when I also reread Twilight because Midnight Sun's coming out. So there's a lot of books on my TBR. There's no way I'm going to get to all these, but I'm really, really hoping so if I push myself enough. A lot of them are short enough that I should be able to fly through them. And we'll see what happens. So wish me luck, and I will see you guys with my first reading vlog. I think I'm going to split them up into like 2 or 3 days each. So yeah, I will see you guys later. Bye.